And will be here a little late, so I have the role of backup quarterback. I expect the team to function efficiently and support me as best you can. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Lavella, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Cope.
Howdy.
Secretary Hargett.
Here.
Dr. Hayburn. Ms. Kadiri. Mr. Kinsey. Ms. Coben. Mr. Kustoff.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Treasurer Liller. Mr. Martin.
Here.
Miss Martin. Ms. Roach. Here. Mayor Wharton.
Here.
Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Let's see. We're one.
Oh.
Kevin.
I thought we had somebody counted.
Just in time.
There we go.
Perfect.
Now we have a quorum. Mr.
Dramatic
Chair.
entrance was planned
I'm so
just
sorry,
for that.
I'm not that
Saving. Thank you, Pam. Welcome all. Appreciate everyone being here. I'd like to recognize
Right here. There we go.
Recognize at this time special guest Dr. Shirley Raines, former University of Memphis president. Thank you for being here. At this time, we have a consent agenda for items 1C, 1.C, 1D, and 1E. After review in the work session, I'd like to check to see if any member would like to remove an item from consent and place it on the regular agenda.
Chairman, on that point, can I suggest from the staff level, based on Mayor Warden's comments, well received yesterday and others, I would suggest from the staff level we go through the operating budgets again here today at some level, which is item, I forget which one of those specifically, 1C, Crystal tells me. I'd suggest we pull that off the consent and put that back on the regular agenda, but I'm open to the will of the commission, of course.
Oh, hey, Dr. Eaton, I agree with that. And I thought AC brought up a really good point earlier. To me, the consent calendar is for things that really go beyond a need for discussion and beyond a need for debate. And I think that, frankly, when you take a look at budgets and the potential for tuition increases, those are two things that should never be on a consent calendar. And I worry that we're getting a little too far away from a spirited discussion on difficult items and put them on consent. And it feels like a kind of a 180 from where we might have been even a year ago. So I fault no one for that. I think staff is very cognizant of trying to get a lot of busy people in and out of Nashville at times. And so, but I know that everybody in this room is really willing to dig in and do the difficult work that's required here.
That will remove C, the budget from the consent agenda, and others. We have a second consent agenda without 1C, which we'll consider in due course.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, would you show David Lillard present? I'm sorry I was late getting here. Okay, thank you.
At this time, I would call for a motion on the minutes. I believe they're in the packet. Do I have a motion we adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. A second? In favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'm calling on Evan Cope for his report. Hearing none, we shall move to the Executive Director report. Dr. Deaton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning all to everyone in the room, and thank you for being here again today. A couple of items for today, and part of two, just to kind of give you a preview, Chairman Cope, I think, intends to lead us into a bit of a discussion on some of the recent legislation that's been proposed, particularly the FOCUS Act, and so I will not comment on that until he's had a chance to do so, but do also want to talk later on about some of the other bills that have been filed to give you a preview of some of the items we're watching in the legislature this year. Is my mic picking up? Maybe it is now. And as well, too, I want to introduce one new staff and also recognize someone who's departing. And let me ask Courtney Rogers, who is in the back, to stand up. Courtney just joined the staff in the Gear Up division, working with Troy Grant. She brings an eclectic background to the commission staff. You've heard the jokes over the years about history and political science backgrounds. Courtney brings with her a master's in fine arts and creative writing, and so will improve the intelligence of the staff quite a bit based on that background, I'm sure. And she comes to us as well, most recently from Teach for America, where she was Director of Communications there, and is joining the Gear Up staff with Troy Grant, and we're welcome to have her. Courtney, thank you for joining us. Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Interstate 24 is unpleasant this morning.
I can imagine, yeah. I will be glad to pause and defer to you, or I can add a few more items. But
if you want to finish your report,
Sure thing.
and then I'll make a few comments. And
Sure thing, yeah. Let me also at this time recognize and thank Chancellor John Morgan, who's couldn't be with us today. Tristan, glad you're in his stead. As many of you know, Chancellor Morgan announced his retirement effective end of this month. He's had a long career in state government, spanning, I think, nearly 40 years, and the back half of that, of course, when I've got to know him, as comptroller, as deputy governor for Governor Bredesen, and most recently, of course, as chancellor at the Board of Regents. And he literally grew up in higher education in Tennessee, his father, of course, being the president at Austin Peay State University. And actually, Mr. Chairman, I think he was a contemporary of your grandfather when he was at MTSU.
exactly right.
So he's had a unique perspective on state government and on higher education, and very few people have had that perch from which to observe a lot of the work that's gone on. He has had a lot of influence over a lot of areas of state government and higher education, and it's my hope, especially these last 5 years or so, that since he's been at the board, a lot of the work that's been put into place, a lot of the student success initiatives that he has led with his staff, I hope those can stand the test of time. I think it's important to students and to Tennesseans everywhere. So I want to thank John for his leadership, for his long state service, for his friendship to many of us, and we will miss him. I doubt he's watching, being his second to last day in office, but if he is, John, we will miss you, and we thank you for your many years to THEC and to state service. So if you could please join me in recognizing John today. Let me now at this point, I'm going to do two things. I want to call on first Jessica Gibson, who is to my left. A lot of the work we tend to talk about is anchored in the master plan and in the Drive to 55, and one of the key areas of that, of course, is our outreach to and service to adult students. And so I want to ask Jessica to kind of give us an update on where the Reconnect effort is going. There have been a lot of developments the last few weeks, and this is a lot of exciting policy work. So with that, Jessica, please give us an update.
Sure. Good morning, Chairman Cope, Dr. Deaton, members of the Commission. Earlier this month, Tennessee launched its outreach efforts to encourage adults to complete a credential. So this is really made up of two parts, a statewide marketing push and direct outreach from institutions to their former students who are halfway to a degree. On January 11th, we started rolling out television commercials, billboards, radio ads, and cinema advertising. Hopefully you've seen this commercial, but if not, I'm going to show it to you now. This is the Tennessee Reconnect commercial that would be playing through February, I believe.
My mom is going back to college to finish her degree. She says it's all because of this thing called Tennessee Reconnect. So I like to help her with her homework. Make sure she has lunch for school. And I give her lots of love and encouragement because, school can be tough. I'm real proud of my mom, and I tell her every time I tuck her in at night.
Be a hero. Be a graduate. Check out tnreconnect.gov today.
We're very pleased with the commercial and the work that was done on it. You should also, hopefully, be seeing billboards. And these are the billboards that will be up around the interstates and around town, also through the marketing push. So the goal here is to get viewers to go to tnreconnect.gov and ultimately connect with an institution. So tnreconnect.gov was updated. It is now an adult learner portal. That also rolled out January 11th to coincide with the marketing push. It is live. I would encourage you to visit it. In the interest of time, I have a couple of screenshots only. So this is the homepage. A user has the opportunity to choose a profile, either returning to finish, going for the first time, or a veteran or service member. Once they click on one of those profiles, there are steps specific to that profile for what you need to do to go to college. Throughout the marketing push, however, this pop-up will show up. A user has an opportunity to enter their information, select institutions they're interested in. At that point, the institution will get that person's contact information and be able to reach out and start a conversation directly with that student. So, or adult. Once that person enters that information or clicks out of the information, they don't have to enter it, they're able to go through some steps. I know this is tiny print right now. As I said, I would encourage you to explore the site. The very first step is to talk to somebody. We're encouraging them throughout the site. This is great information, but they really need to connect with a human being and have a conversation. The steps really cover considerations of programs, institutions, prior learning credits, accelerated programs, connection of education to a career, financial aid, collecting older transcripts, applying and building a support system. The tools on the website include a cost and time to degree calculator, academic program search, institutional profiles, course and exam equivalency tools, the ability to input their past academic history and receive a list of programs and schools into which those credits may transfer, and the ability to directly send this information to an institution. Now, this is a joint effort between THEC, UT, and TBR. We're very pleased with it, and I would encourage you, if you haven't, to explore the site a little bit. So just quickly, to give you an idea of visitor behavior since the launch, we've had 15,000 unique visitors, 80,000 page views. This is actually up from 77,000 yesterday. 80,000 page views. A bounce rate of 37% compared to an internet average of 58%. What this means, bounce rate, is when on average 58% of the time you go to a website, you don't explore it, and you bounce out of it. Ours is at 37%, lower than the average. That's good. That means that people are spending some time on the site. On average, 3.5 minutes. 1,800 people have filled out the pop-up. So that means that we have sent 1,800 names out to our institutions, and they have the ability now to connect with those people. We have 715 accounts created on the website. So we feel that this is going very well so far. The second part of this is the institutional outreach. You have the push cards on your tables. Here's an example here. They started sending these out also on January 11th. To their former students halfway to a degree. The goal here was that they reconnect with their former students and encourage them to come back and provide them assistance and answer their questions. So I want to really mention a couple of anecdotes here. We know that ETSU has created a scholarship for adults returning to ETSU, which is fantastic because really the first question most of the time from a returning adult is, how much is this going to cost me and how can I pay for it? I know that Nashville State and Cleveland State also have some adult returner scholarships as well. Southwest Tennessee Community College is doing degree audits on their list of students so that they can contact them directly and say, you have 3 classes left, these are the classes, you take them now, you can have a degree at the end, which is fantastic because it's much more targeted outreach. University of Memphis had an experience where they contacted somebody from their list. They had 1 class left to take, and they were able to CLEP out of it. So they were able to take a CLEP test to satisfy the requirement, and now they really are going to have a degree in hand shortly. UT Knoxville found 5 people living in the Knoxville area that have enough of the right credits to award degrees to them now. So there are stories like this coming from the institutions. We hope to share more of these with you, and we'll have the institutions reporting to us in April about their outreach efforts and the success around them. So we feel like things are going really well right now, and we're excited to see what happens. Yes? Sure.
For example, there was, supposing someone got most of the way through near Walter State, they relocate maybe to Dyersburg. Walter State finds that person and says, wow, they only need 3 classes. Is there some kind of communication between Walter State and Dyersburg to let another community?
That's a good question. there may be some communication like that. There may be an opportunity for that Walter State student to finish those classes online, depending on what those classes
A lot
are.
of options.
That's correct. And what we're also hoping is that that person that may live near Dyersburg now, if they don't feel like they can go back to Walter State, gets onto tnreconnect.gov and finds the institutions near them, like Dyersburg, and and connects with that person.
One of the reasons why we're trying to take people back to the place where they began is so there are residency requirements for graduation. So it may well be that if a student has begun at one institution, has a substantial number of hours there, if typically, I mean, the people we're really reaching out to are people who are very, very close, and that very, very close may not be enough to satisfy residency requirements. So we're trying to help people finish out where they started.
Thank you, Jessica. Next, let me ask David Wright to come to the podium and give us an update on events we held 2 weeks ago. Roundtables funded by the Gates Foundation that really began to delve into the long-range financial plan necessary to get to Drive to 55. Much like the adult learner work, the long-range financing of Drive to 55 is a key part of the master plan that this body approved in July, and going forward will define a lot of our work. So, David?
Thank you, Dr. Deaton. I don't have any slides, so it's all right. I'll just sit here and talk to you. We appreciate so many of you that came and attended and participated in our 3 roundtable discussions week before last. And all of you were invited, several designees. All in all, we had at Jackson State, UT Chattanooga, and here at THEC, over 40 folks show up and engage in what amounted to sort of a 10 to 2 schedule with a working lunch in the middle. And the discussions were highly, participatory. We had Dennis Jones from NCHIMS and Jimmy Clark from HCM Strategists lead the discussion, but by no means was it them telling us what we ought to do and everyone nodding. There was a lot of back and forth. Appreciate particularly our members for leading a lot of that, the feedback there. We called, speaking of John Morgan, we called these discussions affording our aspirations based on a phrase that John had used sometime on our master planning committee, talking about everybody was clear on the aspiration. What wasn't clear is if we were going to be able to afford the aspiration. And so I was glad to see that some of the things that we talked about in these discussions are actually included in the language on the Focus Act, which has to do with developing a long-range or comprehensive strategic financial plan. We devoted a lot of time in our master plan, and I know Tristan in your strategic plan, about what does the 55% mean for our system or our state? How many additional students per campus? And we took a shot at talking about traditional versus non-traditional. We said we thought about 2/3 would probably need to be non-traditional. I think Tristan's closer to half and half, right? But we know that a large portion of the key to this will reside with the non-traditional group, and so what Jessica and her folks are doing is so critical to this. The thing that was really bracing about the discussions was the price tag of getting to the 55%. So Dennis hit us with a really big number of what it would mean in additional tuition and additional appropriations and additional financial aid. Then he sort of softened it by saying, but the truth is you can enroll additional students at marginal cost, which may be 1/3 to 1/5 of the average cost. The good news is these additional students will cost less. The bad news is that based upon traditionally non-participating student profiles, that they're going to be tougher to graduate. They're going to come with a lot more challenges of just the family and life happening kind of variety to the academic preparation variety. So what I thought came out of these discussions was we heard it at every single stop, Jackson, Chattanooga, and here. And we were really fortunate to have Chairman Brooks, Harry Brooks, sitting right over there on a week ago, well, 2 weeks ago tomorrow on Friday, talking about how they really are in need of, I wouldn't use the word compact, but it's a shared understanding of what we're going to require in terms of tuition revenue, state appropriations, student contribution, employer contribution, institutional contribution, local community. The word shared responsibility gets thrown about a lot, but that's really what it's going to require for us to do this. Essentially, what we're asking institutions to do over the next now 9 years or 9 intervals is produce an additional year's worth of credentials in that span. So we're asking for an additional year of productivity. So it's not insurmountable, but it is going to require something other than business as usual. So I think as a staff, as we process what happened over the last 2 weeks ago, those few days I think it's incumbent on us, regardless of what happens with the Focus Act, to come up with sort of a rubber meets the road type of plan. And I mentioned to Mr. Wilson last night that his idea of what the master plan should look like is probably what we're going to end up producing now in response to these affording our aspirations discussions, because we need to define the gap financially and then essentially do a huge fiscal note on the drive to 55, looking at the different strategies that might be employed to bridge the gap in terms of student credentials, and then costing out those and figuring out where the revenue realistically might come from. I think the thing that's worrisome, just to me personally, and I imagine to all of us that think about this, is it's going to require a long perseverance in the same direction without being distracted by all the various things that come up during the course of a year, not only within the higher education world, but outside. And so there's going to be a lot of communicating, training, and retraining, informing folks that are at the policymaker level as that cast changes over time, and reminding ourselves of what the number one job is. So this was a great start, but it was just a start, and I think we're well positioned. Dennis Jones from NCHM said over and over again that no state other than Tennessee is being this systematic about trying to approach achieving its goal. Many states even haven't even really had the goal discussion. I think we've done a good job there, but what has to happen next is this long-range financial plan that is essentially the checkbook portion that goes along with our master plan and the system strategic plans. Anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. That was a good summary, David. It really is a key part of what we'll be focusing on the next, really 10 years, how to get to Drive to 55 and how to afford that. And it speaks to the complexity of getting all those levers in the same direction. You talked about financial aid, tuition, state funding, capital projects. All that's got to be pulling in the same direction for us to get there. So,
one thing that was brought out was that I've always thought of higher ed finance, the simple metaphor as a three-legged stool, tuition, financial aid, and appropriations. Dennis talked about there's really another leg to the stool, and that is institutional productivity. And we've focused on that for a number of years. We've focused on it with more laser-like precision in the last 5 years. You really, that is a financial gain if you can get more for the same amount out of your institutions. There's limits to that, but it is a piece that we need to add when we think about how to get there. Any questions, comments?
I have one, David. Could you give us just a brief picture of who participated, the constituencies that were there?
Yeah, we had college presidents, we had system staff. We, by and large, let our members represent the business community. Several of you were there and were invited to represent the business interest. We did not have sort of the mea culpa here is, we didn't schedule it optimally to get legislative participation, but looking back on it, I think sort of given the free-flowing nature and the little bit of the messiness of the discussion, maybe that wasn't a horrible thing, and Chairman Brooks really helped us, I think, understand where they're coming from. We had at least we had two students that I remember. There may have been another. And we had good faculty representation. I think over the course of the 3 days, we had 4 faculty folks. So I thought it was a good mix. Always would have liked, to have more from the legislative folks. And the governor's staff didn't attend, but they are well aware of what we did and lent their, they were agreeing with it.
Did I understand your math right, that what, in essence, we have to do is one more year over the course?
That's just a back of the napkin way of thinking about it. But yeah, I did a talk to the private colleges, and this was so, by and large, they weren't in on our discussions as much. Claude Presnell was, but so I tried to give them something to think about as to, what is exactly we're asking you to do, and that's what I came up with. And when you look at the percent change and where a lot of them were, it's like we just need one more year's worth of graduates over the next 10 years out of you. And gratefully, they all seem to, I've been really happy that the private colleges are, of course, they're not as invested in terms on the accountability end as far as the state's concerned, but they are accountable when it comes to, the tuition is what they thrive on. But they're wanting to be partners in this, and there's a lot of states where you can't say that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Dr. D. Next, we'll come to my report, and if you'll indulge me, I'd like to use my time to address the Tennessee Drive to 55 Focus Act and sort of give an overview of what that act is, what it does in general, and again, this is just very general, and then specifically how it would affect THEC if it passes as presented. As many of you know, the bill has been drafted and has been filed by the governor's office, and so to the extent some of you are not familiar with it, I would like to touch on these various points. The Drive to 55 Focus Act supports Tennessee's ambitious goal of obtaining the 55% education standard by 2025. It's designed to support the agility and efficiency of our four-year institutions while continuing to promote our laudable community colleges and TCATs across the state. Local governing boards, as you've heard, will be created for all four-year state universities. This will hopefully allow these four-year institutions to meet the individual needs of the communities that they serve. And I think it recognizes that the four-year institutions do serve unique communities, all the way from East Tennessee State to the University of Memphis and Middle Tennessee State University in my hometown. So I think that will be very important and worthwhile. In terms of how it will affect THEC, as everyone knows and is aware, and I'm referring to my notes a lot because it's more important for me this morning to be accurate than it is to score style points. So I just want to let you know I don't typically like to read reports, but I do want to be accurate in what I tell you. And Russ, correct me if I misstate anything. As we all know, THEC has long been a trusted source of data, information, and policy information for higher education in Tennessee. The Drive to 55 Focus Act strengthens THEC's capacity and these functions and further clarifies its role as a coordinating agency for public policy in Tennessee. THEC's role will be enhanced in the following areas: setting binding tuition recommendations for institutions, capital project recommendations, institutional mission approval, development of a long-term strategic finance plan for higher education, which will incorporate tuition, capital projects, and the funding formula. THEC will also play an important role in providing board member orientation and periodically convening the boards on various matters. The Drive to 55 Focus Act aligns with THEC's master plan for higher education. The Focus Act is going to require a balance between institutional interests and statewide policy goals, and that's where we come in. It's our job to see the big picture and to make sure that everybody else who functions in higher education in Tennessee sees the big picture and works towards achieving our overall statewide goal. The tools that THEC is going to have available to us to do that, obviously, is the statewide master plan, finance policy, new academic program approval, campus master plans, and campus mission statements. Thank you. Have any comments you want to add?
Mr. Chairman, not many. That's a good summary. I would say from the staff perspective, we will meet that challenge in whatever form. If the bill passes, whatever form it takes, we stand ready to meet that challenge. I think that's well phrased. The institutional interests and the statewide interest in finding that balance between the two. And I think, to be very frank, THEC may need to get more assertive in certain areas over time, and I don't think that's a secret. Respecting the line between governance and coordination, of course, but keeping our eye on that ball, which is the long-range goals of the state and the drive to 55. That'll be important for us. So we will meet that challenge, and we look forward to our role in it. As this was released, I guess it was filed last week, the part about new board member orientation, that's an area that we will stand up. Never done much of that before with having numerous new board members emerge. If they emerge, we will have to have a key role, I think, in getting them prepared, getting them educated about the issues we face and the state's issues. So we will answer that bell for sure. So we look forward to it.
Right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any information on those selection of those? Who does that? Where does that lie?
It is in the bill. So I don't know if you.
And I've read this part, Pam. I think the bill is drafted. The governor would appoint. It's a 10-member board. The governor would appoint 8 or 9 of them. There's a faculty member. There's a student member. And I'm probably missing a detail or two. If there's more knowledge on this, someone can jump in. But they'd be gubernatorially appointed as the bill is drafted.
All 6 10-member boards.
I think that's right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll move on next to the recognition of institutional excellence. Our presentation today is going to be on cybersecurity and energy delivery systems by Tennessee State University. Dr. Deaton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me introduce Dr. Keith Hargrove, who's coming to the podium. He is the Dean of the College of Engineering at Tennessee State University, an alumnus of Tennessee State University in mechanical engineering, and he's worked in industry and across major federal research laboratories throughout his career. Last year, TSU received a 5-year grant from the United States Department of Energy to address issues related to the American cybersecurity across energy delivery systems. TSU is the lead entity on that grant, and I want to ask Dean Hargrove to kind of walk us through what that is and tell us about it. Welcome, Dean.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and to the commission. Thank you for the invitation. I'm not sure many of you know, but today is National Have Fun at Work Day, and so I can't think of a better way and more appropriate than you spend that time at a meeting, right? So thank you for that introduction. And I know I only have about 5 minutes, so I decided not to actually go through all of the slides and really just kind of talk your way about what we are doing in the College of Engineering at Tennessee State University. So I serve as dean, and one of the initiatives that we are pursuing is really advocated by the National Academy of Engineering. The National Academy of Engineering has recognized 14 grand challenges for the world, actually, to improve the overall quality of life. 14 grand challenges. One of those challenges deals with cybersecurity. And so the College of Engineering at Tennessee State has decided to aggressively conduct research in that, but probably more important is to prepare graduates to go into that field. And as a result, the college has been very fortunate to obtain about almost $10 million in research activity over the last 6 years. And a lot of credit goes to one of my faculty members who I invited because I'd like him to explain more detail about that award. But the faculty member as our subject matter expert, and we also have our Associate Vice President of Research, Dr. Crumpton Young. Please stand and wave, okay? Who's also here, has been a very strong supporter in that effort. So I'll give you this backdrop. One of the challenges for companies, whether they are Boeing, Northrop Grumman, government agencies, is hiring well-qualified individuals, obviously U.S. citizens, to protect your IT structure and prevent unauthorized access to those type of IT networks. And the partnerships that we've developed over the last 5 or 6 years include Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, primarily defense industries throughout the country. And as a result, they have invested in our college, in our students, in providing an infrastructure and I would call a cybersecurity test bed in order to train students at the undergraduate level, as well as train students to obtain masters and PhDs that we offer in engineering at Tennessee State University. And as a result, we have created an undergraduate curriculum concentration in cybersecurity, as well as the master's and PhD program as well. And so the challenge is this: how do we train individuals to enter the workforce with the appropriate types of skills that addresses the needs of a Raytheon, possibly of a Nissan, of a Volkswagen, of a federal government when it comes to that IT infrastructure. And so we have done that from a curriculum perspective and as a graduate perspective as well. And so when we talk about, and this is the issue I was talking about earlier, the challenge is, and I appeal to this group, is how do we get more of those graduates to remain in the state of Tennessee? And unfortunately, I have to admit that most of our graduates, for the most part, are leaving the state. They're getting hired by these major defense industries that are located in D.C. or Dallas or Arizona or other places. And our graduates are not staying in the state of Tennessee. And the question and the challenge for all of us is that how do we promote more industry to stay here and address some of the same challenges that exist elsewhere? And so I want to ask Dr. Sachin Shetty, our subject matter expert, and he received this award from the Department of Energy, to talk about what are the contents of that award and how does that award actually affect students, graduates, and their impact on the industry in which they decide to serve. So, Dr. Shetty?
Thank you, Dean Harlow, and good morning, everybody. So, in interest of time, I will give the overview of this award, the research activities that we are doing, and also allude to what Dean mentioned about the education impact. So, this was an award granted by the Department of Energy, $22.5 million with over 5.6 cost match to 11 universities and national labs. And the goal was, what can we do to have a secure and resilient cyber systems to impact our energy industry and even oil and gas? And so what's the problem? The problem is most of the energy systems and oil and gas systems are increasingly adopting new computing and networking systems to improve efficiency and capabilities. And what we don't know is these different computing and networking systems that we are connecting to our legacy systems for energy and oil and gas delivery, how secure are they? Has that analysis been done? Has that assurance been done to make sure? You probably hear about smart fridge, smart meters, and most of the times it is a legacy system and you hook up a computing and networking device. A thorough forensic analysis of those cyber systems haven't been done. So the attacks could be malicious, but could also be accidental. And so both of those scenarios need to be analyzed. Plus, you hear a lot about resiliency. So security is making sure that your information is not corrupted and it is confidential. But resiliency is making sure that even in spite of an attack, you can maintain an acceptable level of service. And that is key because we live in a scenario where we cannot shut down all attacks. we got to maintain some level of operation in presence of attacks. And how do you maintain resilience? If you get to a point, if your systems are resilient in presence of attacks and they can maneuver their way through delivering the energy and oil and gas to the pipelines, that will result in a resilient system. That's the goal of this grant. So in terms of the education impact, as you know, we do have, so I closely work with Nashville Electric Service. So some of our students do work with NES. And so they have been investing a lot of efforts in smart meters. And smart meters is a good example of how a resilient energy delivery system can impact the ubiquitous adoption of smart meters. Why would everybody adopt smart meters once everybody's assured that there won't be any cyber attacks? And so if we have the infrastructure at the university, the students are trained, so then they can go for these new jobs and new careers that we haven't heard about in the next 3 to 4 years because of this increasing adoption of new technologies. So the techniques that we're looking at is Internet of Things, cloud computing, looking at risk assessment, and also as a business aspect resiliency. What is the business case for Nashville Electric Service to adopt these new systems for resiliency? Why would they update and upgrade? So that business aspect of resiliency has to be also made in addition to the technology advances. So the students are being trained at the university with the latest technologies and how to make them resilient, and we hope that they will be hired in industries within Tennessee for oil, well, mostly power at Tennessee. And that will happen once they are equipped with the skills to work on providing resilient cyber systems. Thank you.
You have on your desk that we passed out our cybersecurity initiative for research and education at the university. And so it's very broad, again, focusing on workforce with the essence on the research part as well. Like every institution here and that you represent, and even the Drive for 55, how do we prepare individuals for that workforce with the right kind of skills? And we believe that we're doing that in cybersecurity. So on that note, entertain any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. And you may have mentioned this and I may have missed it, but for those students that are participating in this program, would they get a master's degree and some specific degree that complies with what you're doing here?
Yes, good question. What do the students receive by having this type of training? At the undergraduate level, with a series of courses, they are actually getting degrees in computer science and electrical and computer engineering. At the graduate level, we have a very unique master's and PhD program called SICE, Computer and Information Systems Engineering. And that program itself was designed by the Raytheon Company. And so graduates of that program become system analysts or network engineers. And again, the challenge, I say, is that how do we get those graduates to stay in this great city and this great state of Tennessee? And the appeal is that, and we're talking with the Nashville Technology Council and developing that relationship for these new emerging companies, that these are the kinds of individuals you like to hire and add value to your organization.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Hey, thank you very much and have fun today.
Okay, did you have anything you wanted to add? Or? Okay. Well, we're having fun, so we'll move on to the Board of Reasons report from Dr. Tristan Denley. He is stepped out at the moment, but here comes the University of Tennessee,
Right on
just
time.
in time for Dr. Katie High. You're not even going to have time to put your purse down. It's time for your report.
Have to say something now?
You're welcome.
Could you tell a brief story while I get
Well, you'll need to blame Tristan. He's actually first on the agenda, but he's stepped out. So
Okay.
Yeah, but
So he hasn't spoken yet?
He's not spoken yet. He was supposed to speak first.
Okay.
A few moments of awkward silence.
That's exactly
That's
right,
it.
yeah.
I mentioned yesterday that Dr. DiPietro is laid up with a back problem. He had a procedure Monday morning, and he had a herniated disc repaired. It was successful, but he has been instructed to rest, and so he asked me to represent him here today. And they're still looking for a parking space. We were afraid this was a sellout crowd this morning. I've got a few remarks from Dr. DiPietro, and then if you would indulge me, I'd like to show you something on the internet if we have internet connection here. Okay. We've got a couple staff changes in the process. We wanted to let you know about those. At UT Martin, we have an interim chancellor. His name is Bob Smith. He was dean of arts and science there for many years. He's back in as interim chancellor, and in December we asked him if he would stay on for another 6 months. So he's going to serve until about next December, and we're starting the search for a chancellor right now. And then we filled the position of vice president for the Institute for Public Service. Herb Bird is the new vice president there. He's a longtime UT employee. He was with the Institute of Agriculture, and he took office January 1st. And then we're looking to find an executive vice president. We have a position now. David Milhorn has a role as executive vice president and vice president for research, and he works an awful lot with the Oak Ridge National Lab. So he's going to focus his energy on the research side, and then we're going to try to find an executive vice president for the university. Joe talked the last time he was here about his budget advisory group, and this is a group of trustees and administrators who got together and said, you know, we have a funding problem at the University of Tennessee and we need to figure out how to solve it. And we've been working on that for about a year and a half. And when we started out, we identified a funding gap going out about 10 years that was going to be in the neighborhood of $375 million. And because of some changes that we've made, some efficiencies that we've been able to accomplish, we've cut that funding gap to $247 million. That's still a big chunk, but we've done that. We've got a lot of early retirement incentive programs going on. We're reallocating vacant positions. People are doing more. That's typically what we do. We have streamlined and consolidated some services. We have a major effort going on having to do with program review, and we're looking at all the programs, Betty, that THEC identifies as not as highly productive as they could be. They are on a list, and we have come up with very, very detailed metrics to take a look at those programs to see if, number one, we can do some consolidations, or possibly are there some programs that need to be eliminated, and that's a very painful thing to do. But our board is behind us on that, so we'll be going through that effort for the next year. So thanks, Betty. I mean, the report that they do, while it's painful to receive it, it's very, very helpful in terms of telling you where we need to look. Our graduation rates continue to climb at Knoxville. The graduation rate for incoming freshmen is about 70%, and that's pretty good. I think we looked at statewide percentages yesterday in the middle to high 50s, okay? And so Knoxville is looking right at 70%, but that's the 6-year graduation rate, and Knoxville has 2 rates going on. I don't have the other figure with me, but they look at the 4-year graduation rate. That's the one they're pushing there. So, you know, they've got that 15 and 4 program where you come in for orientation and you sit down and there's a tassel under your chair and you pull it out and it's got a year on it that's 4 years out, and that's your graduation tassel, and by golly, we expect you to graduate at that time. So they're really focusing on the 4-year graduation rate. We talked a lot about transfers yesterday, and if we can make the internet work, I would like to point out a couple things that we're doing for transfers that I'm not sure we have ever shown this group before. But there are three things going on. Do you want to type in Tennessee transfer pathways? We talked about these transfer pathways. This is something that the CCTA required that we do. And it actually works. It's a slick, clean, effective way to show you how well these pathways work. If you go to the red box and click on More Information, it'll ask you if you want to transfer into a particular major. So if you would click Transfer by Major, that lists all the pathways that are developed. So I'd like somebody in the audience to pick a major that's on that list, and we'll take a look at it.
Economics.
Economics. Oh, you picked a hard one. Thanks a lot. All right. So if you wanted to go to a community college and eventually transfer to a four-year university in economics, this shows you the courses that you need to take. And if you look at it, you'll see that some of the courses are very specific and some are not so specific. Economics has fewer specific courses. If you went into engineering, they would be very specific about the math course that you needed to take. If you're going into biology, they're very specific about the math and science courses. But what's interesting is this shows you the courses that you take at the two-year school. If you scroll down a little bit, it'll say it's at 60 hours. And then if you scroll a little further, you picked economics, different universities handle economics in a different way. So in some universities, economics is in the College of Business. In some schools, economics is in the College of Arts and Sciences. We did not mess with that, did we, Tristan? We did not, okay? Because we want our institutions to be unique. But if you keep going, it tells you which courses you take which semester. Okay, we have laid it out for over 50 majors. And the reason we don't have more than 50 majors is because those are the 50, well, there's really only like 3 or 4 majors that people tend to transfer into. But you have to have a major, number one, that all the community colleges have the courses that are required for that major. And then you have to have enough universities to offer that major to make it worth your while. So we have done that. We started right after the CCTA was passed. TBR took the lead. We met the first year, we had about 530 faculty come to Nashville for a day, sometimes 2, to create these things. They're fun to create. We get about 20 people in a room and say, "Would you please agree?" And what we had to do a couple times is lock the door and say, "There's food out there. When you agree on which math course they all need to take, and everybody will agree, we'll let you out and eat." We actually did that. And then this year we brought everybody back together and came up with the semester by semester map. So in total, we've had over 650 faculty involved in this. I think more than 120 days of our lives, not my life, but Tristan's people's lives. I participated in some. The first round, I did a bunch of them. But it was a great, great effort. But this is the product that we have come up with, and we're very proud of it. And I think, I'll try not to get maudlin here. When the CCTA was passed, the Board of Regents and the University of Tennessee had to work together in a way that they never had before. And it worked beautifully. It worked because Joe DiPietro and John Morgan got along. We got along with the folks here at THEC. TECUA wanted to play, and we said fine. And so we embraced Claude Presnell and the TECUA institutions that wanted to participate in these efforts. There are TECUA schools listed on these transfer paths. But the last 5 years, I think, has been probably the best 5 years that I can remember being at the University of Tennessee and working with our partners in higher education to make things better. And, you know, I'm sad that John's leaving.
We are too. We are too.
I'll be quiet.
Could I ask a question, please? Well, and to Katie and Tristan, how does a student know to go to this website?
Yeah, so this is on every institution's website, steering students to go here. Yeah,
Perfect.
it's part of it. It's part of advising. It's part of really part of the fabric of all of it. And so some of there's some hidden features in here which are important, at least for. I don't think that they're that important for a student from a student's perspective, but from a multi-system perspective, they're very, very important. First of all, these curriculum maps, they actually all fit together. So we designed them not as one by one, but as a collective, so that because students change their minds, and we know that they do, and so we wanted to create the maps in such a way that if a student began down one path and then they changed their minds, that in the most effective way possible, they'd be able to move over to the other one and still carry on without backing up and starting all over again. This was a very important design principle. So there's some discrete optimization that went into the kind of the construction of those maps. And the second is an intentional alignment around mathematics, not just because I'm a mathematician, but because mathematics really does end up being one of the most significant roadblocks to student success. So it's now the case that across all, and we had to work hard with groups of faculty to get this accomplished. But I think again, it speaks to the interaction between the systems and the way systems can work. That now all of the curricula in these maps, they break into really three flavors. Either they are disciplines that require calculus in some form, and so consequently the map steers students towards that, or they are maps that require statistics, or they are maps that are math agnostic, for want of a better term, that they have to take math, but they don't require any math in particular. And it's now the case, and this is a growing phenomenon across the nation, that not being specific about mathematics is not it's not shorthand for college algebra. College algebra is a course which prepares people to take calculus, and so if that curriculum does not require calculus, then now those students are instead taking mathematics, which now has much more curricular relevance to what it is that they're studying, not just simply doing some algebra. All of that, I mean, you wouldn't know that if you looked at one by one, but it's important to know.
Well, and it's a very simple concept. But I don't know how many faculty members we have across the system, or both systems, and so a very simple concept, getting other people to buy into it and adopt it and implement it was not quite so simple. But we learned, I think, a very valuable lesson, and that is if you get 20 smart people in a room and we ask them to solve a problem, they did it.
This semester we'll be working on 5 or 6 more. So we'll be working on actually education is the next place to look, to create transfer pathways in school and also secondary education.
Fantastic, and I want to commend both systems and everyone who worked really hard. I can just imagine being in those meetings and what that's like. So, yeah, this is really, really impressive. I don't know if anyone else has comments or questions, but
I would just love to applaud both systems for working so hard on this. We've talked about this for a couple of years. I just didn't expect to walk in here today and see it mapped out so thoroughly. And I hope that you all will convey back to many of the people that your daily work touches that how much but the state of Tennessee appreciates this. It is truly a linchpin in Drive 55 and so many of the things we're trying to do. It's excellent.
Yeah, my system. I'd just like to call out Randy Schulte. He's really been the primary force in my office to get this done. It's been a tremendous amount of work, but as you.
Dr. Hyde, did you have anything else you wanted to add on behalf of the UT
thank
system?
you.
Okay, thank you very much. Tell Dr. DiPietro we hope he gets to feeling better soon.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Denley.
Thank you. Well, so first of all, just as a point of privilege, I too would like to echo how how sad I am to see John Morgan retire. I know that it's a very well deserved retirement. As Dr. Deaton mentioned, he's been in public service here in the state for more than 40 years, but he's been an extraordinary leader to work under, and certainly to see that end is certainly sad for me to see that happen. But I know that the work that he's begun at the system will continue, and so really I wanted to sort of talk about at least some of those things that have been happening recently, so you can know that impact. The first is really around the way in which the message is disseminated. That we last semester met with every institution, or actually all 19 community colleges and universities, and then also the TCATs, and had what we called institutional briefings. They were about half-day meetings with the leadership team from each campus, and they revolved around really understanding on a broad scale how it is that the system and the institution work together to further that institution's mission and focus towards Drive to 55. The bottom line of that really, actually the first thing on the meeting was to talk about, as our system, I think you've heard this number before, we recognized that we would need to move to 43,202 graduates by 2025 on an annual basis. That's, we've broken it down to that kind of progress. And so focusing that down institution by institution, knowing precisely, well, what does that look like at Walter State or at Austin P or at TSU? What's your target? And then talking to that president and saying, okay, so if this is your target, then first of all, can you meet that target? And then how can we work together to meet that target? Because we know that's, numbers on a spreadsheet are not the same as actually making that happen. Numbers on a spreadsheet, they inform that conversation, because now that we know that a particular institution has to aim for this number of graduates, that has implications around the physical plant, around the faculty, around finances, around all kinds of things and new programs and all of that. But until you know what that final goal is, you can't make those plans in the way that you need to be able to accomplish those goals. So those institutional briefings have been extraordinarily important. This is the second time that we've done that, and I hope that those will continue. I think both parties really have found them very valuable. So having those goals is one thing, having plans in place to make them happen are something else. So I wanted to tell you about some of the large-scale work that we've been doing to make that happen. We too have been meeting with each of the institutions around programs that are low producing, for want of a better word. Our work, again, I've met with each of the programs that are on that list this year, and this was the idea. The idea was to make a definitive plan as to how it would be that we could make each of those programs a constructive and functional program. How can we make them yet more productive than they are? They were all presented to this commission as programs that would be successful and productive, and if we are to reach Drive to 55, then it's clear that we don't need to be. If programs are anachronisms and they no longer have any purpose, then we should shut them down. But if that's not the case, then instead we should find ways in which we could make them more vibrant. And so that's been the focus, and I think that report will be presented to you, if not at this meeting, then very shortly. It's a very substantial document from our perspective. Each of those departments had really created a substantial and I think very valuable plan for them to be able to meet the goals that we would like to see them reach. It's also the case that we've been putting in place a large-scale number of student success initiatives. The first of those was around student choice. Lots of students come to universities traditionally and don't have a major that they've selected. They're undecided. We did some data analysis on what that meant in our system, and this was quite shocking, that more than half of those students actually dropped out of college before they chose anything at all. It's just really shocking. And so we decided that we needed to do something about that. What we did was we created this concept of an academic focus. So these are affinities of disciplines, and there's 8 of them. And the reason why there's 8 is, again, there's some choice architecture here. People are able to make informed kinds of choices from numbers of things ranging between 6 or 7 and let's say 10. Much past that, much past that, people start to find it very difficult to be able to make definitive decisions. So this is the trouble, that people come to a college, there's 70, 80, 100 different programs, and somebody says, well, which one would you like to do? And it's like going to the Cheesecake Factory, right? There's just too much choice. And that makes it very challenging then to narrow that down to a single thing. Instead, what we said is, okay, if you don't know precisely what you want to do, well, then do you know, in these broad scale ideas, do you know education or healthcare or business or STEM fields or humanities? Can you narrow it down to that? And what we found was that people could very comfortably narrow it down to that. And actually, we surveyed those students so we required every incoming freshman across the TBR system this last fall to make that kind of choice, either a specific program or to narrow it down to this focus area. And of course, as soon as we do that, now we can make sure that the courses that they're taking actually align towards that direction. They feel as though they are building towards something, and we can make sure the courses they take allow them to be able to refine that choice. As we surveyed them, what we found was that only about less than 1% of the students said, yeah, I chose because you made me. 99% of them said, what I chose was something in the direction that I have an interest. So in that sense, it's always difficult when you require people to make a choice, but we feel that this has been a successful requirement, and we hope that will play out over time. It's also the case that now that they're on a path, we had to recognize places where those paths have significant roadblocks. Done a lot of research around the ways in which the curricula across the system really are constructed, and it turns out that there's a small number of courses, around 30 courses, where more than half of the system's enrollment is concentrated. And it turns out to be that those courses play an extremely fundamental role in the overall success of students. We call these courses critical courses, and so over the last 2 years, we've been working hard to work with groups of faculty to think again about how it is that those courses could be taught to try to improve student success in those courses. This is our revitalization initiative that began back in fall 2014. Since in that fall and this last fall, we've done more than 100 projects in that way. We'll do, right now the RFP for the next round is out. We'll hopefully do around 50 more this coming fall. In the first semester, as I say, there were around 50 projects. The overwhelming number of those were very successful, statistically significant results to show that the new pedagogies that the faculty came up with really did improve student success in those pilots. And so we've been working with those groups to take those pilots and then take them up to a full institutional scale. This is not about changing individual sections. This is about changing pedagogy across entire courses. These courses are not courses where there's 1 or 2 sections on a campus. These are courses where there's 80 or 90 sections on a campus. And so we've been working with faculty to do that. Again, the results are coming in from fall 2015, and we have actually an RFP at this time to work with campuses to take those pilots that were really promising and take them up to a full institutional scale. Part of that work was changing remediation. I think I mentioned yesterday the change in the way in which we work with developmental education in the system. As a nation, we've been trying to solve this problem for 50 years, and it's very clear that the traditional approach of students going into standalone developmental education or standalone remediation simply really has not worked. In our system, historically speaking, those students who began in a math developmental experience, only around 12% of those students ever completed a college credit-bearing math class in an academic year. And students of color, that was even lower, it was around 7%. Yesterday, Victoria, I think, shared the overall graduation rates for those students, and they're very low. And largely, it's not because they get very far in. Most of those students never even make it out of remediation, and this is not a Tennessee phenomenon, this is a national phenomenon. So what we did was we did a large-scale pilot to make sure that this new pedagogy really would work for us, and then last fall, across the entire system, 2- and 4-year schools, all of those students who came in with ACT scores that were below 18 in math, reading, or writing, they were enrolled directly into a credit-bearing experience in math, writing, or a reading intensive class, and then were required to also have a supplementary instruction experience which really supported them as they took that credit-bearing course. It's very important for you to know that the credit-bearing course they took is exactly the same course that everyone else took. There wasn't any extra credit in the other thing or anything like that to inflate the results. But what I can now show you is what that turned out to be like. There we go. So these are the results for the math. And so the golden bars are the results for this full-scale implementation. The blue bars are our historical averages, and you can see that the bottom line is that historically we had around 12% of students passing that credit-bearing math class in an entire academic year. We've moved now to more than 50% passing in that first semester, which is a really striking change. And the reason for the disaggregation is, of course, students come in more or less prepared. We have students who are right there on the cusp, but we also have students who are much, much more weakly prepared than that, with ACT scores all the way down to the very low teens. This would not be as useful a new pedagogy if it only worked for people who are right there on the cut. But that's not true. And that actually, well, you can see that this is a pedagogy which is much more successful for basically everybody. As yet, we're still slicing and dicing. In the pilots, we were able to see that this pedagogy worked extraordinarily well for underrepresented students, low-income students, adult students. We're confident that that's also true in our full implementation, but as yet, the data is only about well, maybe 5 or 6 days old, so we haven't been able to dig that far in, but we're confident that'll be true. In writing was not as severe as mathematics. The underlying rate was always a little higher, around 30%. But you can see the bottom line is we've doubled the success rate there again in a single semester, and those gains are also appreciated all across the ACT score range. So we're pretty excited about the fact that this co-requisite approach really is going to be a very substantial change to the success of our students on an ongoing basis. In the pilot, again, we saw very significant increases in full-to-full retention, in the success of students all across their studies, not only just in those particular classes. And so I'll be happy to come back another day and hopefully share as we track these students on an ongoing basis to see what happens to them. But at least we can be confident that we've taken the first roadblock out of the way. Clearly there is more yet to do. Last thing I wanted to talk about is around using technology. So actually on Monday, we will be launching the new face of RODP. I think many of you know for a long time we've had the Regents Online Degree Program, which was visionary when it was created, but that was 14 years ago, and now we needed to have a new face for that. The new face is called TNE Campus. And hopefully if you listen to the radio or on the internet to any length of time, you will see the publicity campaign that we'll be having around that. The difference is that TNE Campus will bring together all of the online offerings of all of the schools in the system. And so it won't be the case anymore that you have to kind of know where to look to go find it. Instead, you can go to TNE Campus and find all possible digital assets that the TBR schools offer. So that will consist of initially more than 400 fully online degree programs at all of our institutions, ranging all the way from certificates all the way up to graduate degrees, and also more than 450 shared online degree courses, which we teach collectively as a system. It's also the case that over time we will be supplementing that material with material like MOOCs and also other digital assets. You might like to know that in the fall, actually, we offered 2 MOOCs with all letters represented, massive, open, and online, and of course courses. Those courses actually were around freshman writing and freshman statistics. So they were courses which had multiple use. If students were taking an AP class, or maybe they were a freshman in college and wanted to have another source of material, or they just were curious. We actually had about over 20,000 people who were taking those courses last fall. So this is an interesting phenomenon because I think most people understand that the MOOC phenomenon as it unfolded, most people who are taking those kinds of study, they tend to be people who already have degrees. I'm not really persuaded that we had 20,000 people who already had degrees who thought, I know what I'm going to do this evening. I'm going to go and do a statistics class. That just doesn't seem, not a freshman undergraduate statistics class. So we think we found a new need, a new phenomenon, and we will be developing 3 more MOOCs to join that. And those, of course, also will be on TNE campus, and I encourage you to go and look through those offerings and talk to Jessica yesterday where we find ways in which we can marry that resource with Tennessee Reconnect, so that, of course, many returning adults may well find that an online degree program fits their lifestyle perhaps more effectively than an on-ground one. Last piece is around predictive analytics. So we've actually been a national leader in the development of using predictive analytics to inform student success. Actually, there is a national initiative by the National Association of System Heads called Taking Student Success to Scale, and actually TBR is the lead. There's 3 lead systems: ourselves, the Cal State system, and the SUNY system. And so we're the lead for the predictive analytics piece. We brought all of our institutions together for what we call a completion academy. So this is again institutional leadership groups who come together for a 2-day meeting, not to just listen and sit, but instead to sit and make definitive plans. So at the end of the day, each of the institutions made an intentional implementation plan about how it would be that they could use predictive analytics as part of the package that influences student success on their campus. And then actually as a system, we developed a new predictive analytics platform called Trajectory Analytics, and that is now available at all of the schools. And so there are other, of course, vendors that are out there selling tools, and several of our schools have also invested in that. But across all of the universities and community colleges, we have this fundamental tool, which we know will influence student success over time. So thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Dr. Denley? Thank you very much for your report. Next, and Russ, I'll ask for clarification. We're pulling the budget off the consent agenda.
That one here now.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and call on Crystal Collins then to address item 1C on the agenda, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Deaton, members of the Commission. Yesterday during the work session, I went through the revised operating budgets for 2015-16 pretty thoroughly. So this morning, I'm just going to do a brief overview of some of the conclusions and some of the information that's presented to you in item 1C in your document, and this is an action item. So beginning with a discussion of some longitudinal finance trends, if you look over the last 30 years of revenue in Tennessee, for here in this presentation for universities, inflation adjusted into current or 2014 dollars, you can see where the finances how the complexion has changed over the last 30 years. Here, this is representing the state appropriations, and you can see pretty significant divestment over the last 30 years from about $11,000 to about $5,000 when you look at revenue per FTE. Now, the other side of this coin from state appropriations is what we think of as, or what we talk about student fees, but here what we're presenting is student fees less grant aid. And what this shows is sort of a proxy measure for out-of-pocket costs for our students. So if you were to look at the proportion or the revenue per FTE of student fees once you take out any sort of grant aid, so TSAA, TELS, or the Pell Grant, you can see a pretty significant increase, especially in the last 4 years, but also in the early 2000s when we started to see the movement away from state appropriations. Now, in the last 3 or 4 years, those increases in the student fees less grant aid is twofold. It is a higher reliance on student fees, so tuition and fees coming from students, but we're also seeing stagnating buying power in our grant aid across Tennessee. And so the purple bars here show your TELS TSAA, which is our need-based state award, and the Pell Grant. And you'll notice it's actually declining as far as the proportion of revenue per FTE. And our concern here is that we haven't seen any significant increases in the TELS and the Lottery Scholarship Award. As the economy has gotten better, a lot of our students are no longer qualifying for full Pell, which is a good thing, but it's also not helping them offset any of the increased costs of education. Just looking here at the overall bars, the red bars, what's of interest here is over the last 30 years, it's been relatively flat. So total revenue per FTE, so per student, has been relatively flat from about $15,500 3 years ago to about $16,500 in 14-15. Now, when you were to compare, if you were to compare this to revenue per award, so rather than looking at per student, looking at per degree, again at universities, and these are undergraduate degrees, you'll notice that there's been a trending downward of the last 30 years. The green bars here do include the grant aid, but you can still see a higher reliance on student fees compared to state appropriations. And the trending downward, at our highest, we were at about $83,000 or $83,000 of revenue per award, and we're now down to about $62,000 per award. So that's an increase in awards, but also a decline in revenue. So looking quickly at our revised operating budgets, as reported, our institutions, our academic formula units received about $43 million new dollars, operating dollars and appropriations in 15-16. This is equivalent to about a 5.2% increase in funding over the 1 year period. If you add in our non-formula units, our formula and non-formula units, that increase is $67.7 million, which is about a 5.6% increase. You may recall in 2014-15, the increase from 13-14 to 14-15 was less than 1%, as it was a flat budget cycle. So our institutions, and I'm sure our systems and THEC are very thankful to the governor and the legislature for funding us in 15-16 and for providing these new funds for our institutions. University revenue, so this is the composition of university revenue over the last 10 years. And again, here the blue bars are tuition and fees, red bars are state appropriations, and then you have sales and services and other services at the top in the green and purple. And what this shows is what we were seeing before in the revenue per FTE, a change in the proportion of revenue that is attributable to each category. In FY06, about I think it's about 46%, 47% was tuition and fees. Now we're about 62%. And I talked about this yesterday, but if you were to switch that, if you were to actually take our revenue composition in 2006 and apply it to the revenue that we received in 15-16, you would actually move about $310 million out of tuition fees and into state appropriations for our universities. We have a similar picture for our community colleges. You can see an increase in the tuition and fees, a decrease in state appropriations. If you were to do the same project where you moved the composition back to FY06, you would generate about $77 million in state appropriations moving out of tuition and fees and into state appropriations. So if you did that for both sectors, for universities and community colleges, you would actually move about 14.5%, so almost 15% of the overall revenue of those systems out of tuition and fees and back into state appropriations, and that's just over the last decade. Our total E&G revenue for all of our formula and non-formula units reached $3.27 billion in 15-16. We eclipsed $3 billion in 13-14, so just 2 years ago, and eclipsed $2 billion only a decade ago. So the enterprise is growing and is doing so pretty quickly. When looking at expenditures, Unlike the revenue picture, our expenditures by category has remained relatively stable. Our institutions here, universities, are still devoting a majority of their expenditures to the core academic function of the campus, so instruction, research, public service, academic support, still over 60% at all of our universities. We are seeing an increase in the proportion of expenditures attributable to scholarship and fellowship at our universities, and also that's also true at community colleges. Here, they're still, again, directing the majority of their expenditures towards the teaching function, the core academic function. There's no research at community colleges, so that's why there's not any red bars here. We are seeing increased investment in scholarships, fellowships, as well as maintenance and operation as those campuses continue to age. Now, briefly looking at tuition and fees, this table is available on page 18. It's table 5 in your notebook, and this is just looking at the tuition and fee levels, brief history, so a decade ago, last year, and this year, and then looking at the one-year change across institutions. I talked about this in more detail yesterday about differential tuition, and we're seeing differentiated tuition on our campuses. We're depending on what class you're in. So if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, you're paying different fees, and this is a way for institutions either like UT Knoxville, which was phasing in their finish in 4, their 15 and 4, which Dr. Hyde talked about earlier, or institutions like ETSU, where students have voted to increase some fees in order to do some things on campus, and rather than apply that to all students, they're phasing it into entering classes, and so that's why you see the difference there at ETSU. These increases are much smaller than they were last year. The 13-14 to 14-15 increases were about 6.7 to 7% at our universities because, again, it was a flat budget cycle. So we're very happy that our institutions were able to sort of rein in the increase since we did receive $43 million for our colleges and universities in 15-16. Now again, keep in mind this is maintenance and mandatory fees. THEC only makes a recommendation for maintenance fees, and our recommendation last year was 0 to 4%, and I believe all of our institutions were able to stay in line with this. This is looking at tuition recommendations for 16-17. We're recommending 0 to 3% across all of our sectors. This is in partnership with our $40.9 million recommendation for increase in operating funds for 16-17, and our institutions are going to begin those conversations along with the boards here in the next few months on establishing those 16-17 tuition and fee levels. The 15-16 revised operating budgets are balanced. They have been thoroughly reviewed by members of the commission and staff, and we would recommend that you approve them and authorize the executive director to make technical adjustments where necessary.
We have a recommendation from staff, and at this point in time, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move.
We have a motion.
Second.
Do we have a second? Have a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Crystal. Next, we have the consent agenda, and as the commission will recall, the two items on the consent agenda are the master plan for the University of Memphis and for the Southwest Tennessee Community College. We received very informative and good reports yesterday at our workshop. And so at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion. Do we have a second? Have a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the new academic programs portion, and I will call on Ms. Betty Dandridge Johnson for this item.
Good morning, Chairman Cope, Dr. Deaton, and members of the Commission. I will direct your attention to Agenda Item A1 that's in your notebook for the new academic program approval request for East Tennessee State University, and this is for a master's degree in sports science and coach education. ETSU proposes to offer a graduate program to complement the other academic programs in sports for which there is a high institutional priority and commitment. There has been considerable interdepartmental, community, as well as international partnerships that currently exist through the academic department, the Center of Sports Science and Coach Education, as well as the ETSU Olympic Training Site. The proposed program will consist of two concentrations: the Applied Sports Science, which will be taught on campus, and the Strength and Conditioning concentration will be offered completely online. The establishment of this proposed program provides ETSU with a unique and timely opportunity to develop a pool of well-trained coaches. Currently, the National Collegiate Athletic Association is addressing ways of increasing competencies of strength and conditioning coaches through education and certification due to safety issues related to athletes' health and well-being. This proposed program aims to address these deficiencies. Students will be taught by many of the exercise and sports science department faculty that are internationally known practitioners in their respective fields. The program is scheduled to start this August, with the first graduates earning the degree 2 years later. The program has undergone a rigorous campus as well as board review by Dr. Tristan Denley and Dr. Pam Knox, and the required external consultant site visit. The external reviewer from the University of Oklahoma highlighted student-centered faculty and facilities as program strengths. TBR approved this program at their December board meeting, and the THEC staff recommends approval of the program. Be pleased to answer any questions.
Questions on this item? I will entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please, ma'am.
The next one is a new academic program approval request, and this is from both Tennessee Tech University and East Tennessee State University, and this is to offer a joint Bachelor of Science in Engineering. This program will be the first joint program in the state and will expand opportunities for students, increase resource sharing, and minimize unnecessary duplication. The program will provide a general knowledge base of many different engineering areas and will allow students to select from many technical electives. Students will also complete an industry client-driven capstone project. This proposed program will combine the strengths of the two institutions, and the program administration details have been outlined in a very detailed memorandum of understanding that has been signed by the college deans at both institutions. There will be a program director on each campus, and the director will visit the partner campus to interact with students and faculty, and this will happen twice each semester. Each institution is responsible for delivering about half of the curriculum. Students at the campus will have a mixture of on-site as well as distance education delivery modes. Faculty teaching in the program will hold joint appointments at both institutions. Students earning this degree will receive a diploma bearing the names of both institutions that will be signed by both President Odom as well as President Nolan. The program is scheduled to start this August, with first graduates earning the degree in 2019. Tennessee Tech and East Tennessee State University will also jointly apply for accreditation, and that site visit will occur after those first graduates, and so that will occur in 2020. Currently, the Engineering Technology Accrediting Agency accredits 3 joint undergraduate programs already in the United States. The program has undergone rigorous campus reviews at both institutions. We had a 3-day site visit. The review of the program was also reviewed by TBR staff along with the external site visit. The required site visit for baccalaureate programs was a result of the Commission's approval of the new academic program policy last January. TBR approved this program at their December meeting, and the THEC staff recommends approval of the program. Are there questions? Yes,
Betty,
ma'am.
did I hear that correctly? You said the first class will graduate before accreditation of the joint program occurs?
That's correct, and that's currently how ABET, which is the accrediting agency, you have to have graduates prior to the site visit.
Thank you.
Question, is this the first example of a joint bachelor degree program between state universities?
Yes, it is.
It's really interesting. It's a neat concept. Are there other states doing this, or how did we decide to sort of pursue this?
Well, currently, there are 3 states that are doing this, Illinois, Maryland, as well as Missouri. So those programs in those states are accredited by ABET. There's been much discussion. There's also on the table another joint program that will be coming before the commission with the DMP between both of these institutions.
A neat concept, I think.
I'd like to commend both ETSU and TTU on putting this together. This is really innovative way to address unique resources in both of those institutions and providing opportunity in something that I've had a keen eye on, as Katie knows, for a long time, which is bringing engineering into Northeast Tennessee. So the work that you guys have done is deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Which institution will actually issue both? They will be listed as.
It would be listed, Mayor Warden, as Tennessee Tech and East Tennessee State University. The diploma will have both institutions' name listed, and it will be signed by both presidents.
I just don't want us to double.
Mayor Warden, on that point, in terms of the outcomes formula to encourage the collaboration, we've talked to schools about counting it in both of their outcome bachelor's degree counts. So they don't split the credit for, they both pull weight on it. So to encourage that collaboration, when we calculate the financial reward, we'll credit to both. In terms of productivity, our factbook reporting, we'll make sure it is a single degree. Yeah.
So I guess otherwise they would be penalized.
One more clarification. This is the first joint program in Tennessee, but not in the country?
Right, in Tennessee.
And just to clarify, we do have other joint degrees, just not at the bachelor's level. So for instance, there's a joint master's in social work. We have actually a joint master's in nursing program. So there are several other joint programs, but none that are precisely like this. This is the first degree that we have that will be double badged in that way, that will be awarded at both institutions.
Other questions? I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much, Betty. Thank you. All right. Item 1B, post-secondary education authorization. Dr. Stephanie Bellerchase.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Dr. Deaton, members of the commission. Good morning. Before I get into my action item, I was asked to give a little bit of background of the changing landscape of state authorization. There's a lot of moving parts going on right now. One of the biggest parts that has changed the way we kind of do things is the U.S. Department of Education and their integrity rules. And when they came out with that, that's when almost everybody in the country, in America, realized that you have to be either exempt or operating legally, as they say it, as a post-secondary educational institution to continue to get Title IV funding. And so because of that, public institutions that had never had to be authorized in other states, it was brought to their attention, and there was a lot of activity and a lot of things going on. So because as a result of that, there was an act called SARA. SARA is the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. And what that does basically is allows you to have authorization in your home state, and then it allows you to operate without having to go through each entity in the other states by paying that one fee and being authorized by that one person. All this is relevant. It's helping our state schools, but as far as the landscape of state authorization, it's changing the way we do things and the way things look. So I set out to say we have an unusually small agenda today, and part of the reason is SARA. generally, like big universities like the University of Phoenix, the online campus, and Kaplan University that only do online, because we are a Sarah state, and THEC is the portal agency, and our division does do the administrative work. But because we're a Sarah state, and the states that they are domiciled in are Sarah, they no longer have to come under the commission. They are allowed to operate because of their SARA approval in their state. So generally, those large online universities would have 20, 30, 40 programs on the agenda, but because they no longer need the commission's approval, we only have 23 programs this time. And then on the initial authorization side, we have 2 institutions. We started out with 16. But only those 2 met all the minimum standards, and the other 14 got what we call a deferment. And that's when we look through each minimum standard, and if they don't make it, we send them a letter and tell them exactly what they need to do to make it for the next agenda. So there's only 2 institutions and 23 new programs. Another change that we just recently encountered was, since 1974 at least, the cosmetology and barber schools were exempt from the oversight of the commission because they were under commerce and insurance. But because of what I mentioned earlier, the USDOE and the integrity rules, the USDOE did not feel that the authorization they were getting for commerce and insurance was the standard that they needed to continue to get Title IV. So now we're trickling in cosmetology and barber schools, and about 9 of those schools that were deferred this time were cosmetology or barber schools because they're not used to the extensive nature of what we do. So the Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions has recommended that those 2 institutions and those 22 new programs be given temporary authorization and approval respectively. And also, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Back to your observation, your statement on cosmetology and barbering. That was
Well, right now they're commerce and insurance and us. So there was a bill passed, I think, last year that went into effect July 1st, 2015. And basically, if they want to, what happens is if you get Title IV funding, you get audits by the Department of Education. Now, if you get an audit, you have to produce a document saying that you are legally authorized to operate as a post-secondary educational institution in Tennessee. The letter that they received from Commerce and Insurance, the USDOE did not feel like it was it met the standard, basically. So there was a bill passed, and Commerce and Insurance was very much involved in passing the bill to take the exemption away and have them have the degree grant, will have the accredited Title IV eligible cosmetology and barber schools have to be regulated by the commission. They still get their license from Commerce and Insurance.
but for purposes of Title IV. Certified.
Right now, the way we operate with specialty boards, massage therapy, nursing, or anything, before we review their application, they have to go to the entity. So they have to have Commerce and Insurance approval first, saying that their curriculum meets the standards so that their graduates can be licensed as estheticians, cosmetologists, or whatever. Once we get that letter, then we review it. So they make sure they meet the industry standard. We make sure they meet all the other standards.
But the question is, who determines whether we really need more?
The short answer would be initially cosmetology, the Commerce and Insurance would decide whether they want to license them. But there is a statute we do have a statute that says that the commission nor the committee does not have to approve any program that they believe there's sufficient program offerings already. And part of that is we send the agenda to all the state schools 30 days prior to our meeting. So if they feel like they're already meeting that need, then they're able to address the commission and say that. I hope that answers your question. And part of our application is they do have to send in the jobs that are available and about how much those people can make.
I want to see us
There's no way to ensure that an institution does not close, but I believe the standards that we have in place, we do make them accountable if they do. We still have the tuition guarantee fund. We've recently had 3 institutions close. One of them closed, 2 of them closed without finishing the education that the students had paid for. In Crichton College, well, formerly Crichton College, Victory University, which was regionally accredited by THEC actually, and Anthem Career College here in Nashville, and they closed nationally. So we do have safeguards for students who have lost money, the tuition guarantee fund, and we look at their financial statements every year to make sure they're at least making one-to-one, and the accredited institutions have to meet their accreditor standards also. Yes, the TGF would either pay students back for their unearned tuition or pay for a teach-out. So the TGF is a separate fund that the state has. All schools that are authorized have to pay into that fund for 6 years. It's held by the treasurer. The treasurer actually is the chair of the Tuition Guarantee Fund Board. It's separate. It sits there, and whenever we need it, we make a recommendation and the board can release it. One thing I would like to add, for the cosmetology and barber schools that are not accredited and do not receive Title IV, they are only under Commerce and Insurance. It's only for the institutions that have to meet the standard of the U.S. Department of Education.
We'll entertain the recommendation as presented.
So moved.
Adopt. A second?
Second.
Favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the business portion of our meeting, and next we'll move to phase 2, which is information items. We'll call on Victoria Harpole.
Morning, Chairman Cope, Dr. Deaton. I'm going to talk to you today about the academic program review, and this report that you have in front of you is absolutely a joint effort from the academic affairs staff, and that's Betty Dandridge Johnson and Herbert Brown came together and put this together for you. So we'll go over 2 things. The program activity, which is any of the new, modified, or terminated programs from the year of 2015. So some of these programs came before you when Betty presents about new programs that you've authorized. Some are authorized at the board, and then some can be through the new academic policy. Modified programs where there's some changes to a program can actually be now approved by the executive director. The other piece is the post-approval monitoring, and this is the next piece of what happens to a program after it's approved, is it goes through a monitoring period to make sure that it's hitting those benchmarks for enrollment, graduation, some financial benchmarks to make sure that it's a healthy, thriving program on campus. So here's a look at the activity over 2015. Excuse me, there are 34 programs altogether, which is about where we were last year as far as new programs when you add the 27 new programs with the 8 program modifications. Almost half were at community colleges, and those are directly approved by the board, so those are your certificate and associate programs. There are 11 terminations, which is slightly lower than in 2014, but not real out of character for what we'll see in a year. To draw your attention a little to the modified programs, this is the first year that the executive director has been able to use that authority given to him by the commission to allow for program modifications. Usually what happens is you have a very healthy, thriving concentration within a current program that they'll elevate up to a program. So the actuarial science used to be a concentration within the mathematics BS at MTSU, and now it's its standalone program, its own standalone program. And in almost all of these instances, like the mathematics program is still there, as well as now you have the actuarial science program. So it's not replacing a program, but really elevating one of those really thriving concentrations and allows for a more particular curriculum to serve the students. So now the post-approval monitoring is really what happens after the programs are approved. And depending on the level of the program, you'll have a different length of time for the monitoring cycle. So your certificate and associates are a 3-year monitoring cycle, the bachelor's and master's are 5 years, and now our doctoral programs are monitored for 7 years after. It's definitely a collaborative process between the institutions and THEC, looking at their financial records, looking at are they meeting, like we said, those enrollment benchmarks, those graduation benchmarks. That way we can ensure that there's healthy growth in those programs. So at the end of 2015, 21 programs completed their post-approval monitoring. So when programs complete the 3, 5, or 7-year cycle, there's usually a handful of programs that we have deemed as underperforming. So they haven't met either those enrollment benchmarks or those graduation benchmarks. In that circumstance, we'll extend the monitoring period for another year and check back in and say, okay, what was happening since you left the post-approval monitoring? Is this now a healthy program on campus? You can see, for the most part, they definitely are. In the case of Austin P, they actually went ahead and inactivated the program. There was just enough of a lack of demand when the Hemlock Semiconductors plant closed that it made more sense to inactivate that program, that it was not one that was being used, and to funnel students into some different programs. But we do keep in touch with those programs to make sure that just because they leave post-approval monitoring and may not have yet met those benchmarks, that they're continuing to work and to strive towards that. So just to, like I mentioned, it's a collaborative process. So some of the things that we'll work with the institutions for is to try to help them create a strategy for promoting recruitment, to strengthen the academic advising. At one of the Tennessee Tech programs actually created a couple of student positions within the department to have students actually working in the department as well as teachers' assistantships, to have them working in the department as well as going to school, to have a greater investment and put more students financial aid to them to make it a more attractive program. So with that, any questions?
The Austin P program you listed, is that the same as?
No.
They just sit idle until, do they come back to a review process?
It's a 3-year period where they're inactive, and then after the 3 years, unless it's reactivated by Austin P, it would be considered terminated. But no, they did not move to immediately terminate it to see if there was an industry that would pick up sort of where the Hemlock Semiconductor left off.
Morning to Chairman Cope, Dr. Dean, and members of the Commission. I'll be very brief, but this is item 2B, and it can be found in your notebook. The Improving Teacher Quality Project is a federally funded program that provides funds to institutions to conduct professional development for K-12 teachers. The program has a unique partnership that partners the College of Education, the College of Arts and Science, and a high-need LEA all together. This unique partnership is a great opportunity for THEC to continue to strengthen the bridge between K-12 and higher education. Each year, THEC works directly with the Department of Education to identify a focus. This year's focus was STEM subjects for high school teachers. Institutions from across the state submitted proposals that outlined their ability to provide professional development to high school STEM teachers. And each proposal was allowed a maximum funding level of $75,000 for a 1-year period. THEC convened an advisory committee that reviewed and evaluated each of the proposals. We received 30 proposals in total, and the committee consisted of numerous K-12 and higher education experts. Some of them are here today. I would like to thank you for your service. It was a relatively difficult task. Of the 30, 13 programs were selected, and over 300 different STEM high school teachers will receive professional development through this grant. To give you an idea of the sort of type of programs that were funded, TTU has an amazing program that's going to provide professional development to roughly 20 teachers, and the professional development will focus in computer programming and robotics with specific connections to Algebra 1 and physical world concepts. There's a brief summary of each of the funded programs in your notebook. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on this? Very much. Final item on our agenda is item 2D. Happened to 2C, did we? A, B, and D.
Well, we'll keep that a secret.
Okay.
Approval.
Yeah,
Yeah. Needs a roll call vote now.
Just close your eyes. Yeah.
I was sleeping when I did
Item 2D, we'll call on Dr. Deaton for this item.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just of note that the April meeting will be April 20th to 21st here in the Commission's boardroom, of course. We are tracking the legislative session. The Governor's State of the State address is Monday. Kicks off the budget process. We'll make sure we update you on what is proposed. By that time, at the pace the General Assembly has gone the last few years, they may be nearing the end of the session, and so we'll have a lot to talk about at that point. Scott Sloan, our liaison, who would normally be here to give you an update on legislative items, is unable to be with us today. So I'm going to do a sort of a short version of what I think he would have said about bills that we're following in the plaza this year. In addition to the Focus Act, of course, which is an administration bill, the administration has also filed a bill by Governor Haslam that would seek some reforms within the post-secondary education authorization area that we heard from Dr. Chase. It's a bit of a philosophical change, and at heart, as our reading of it, it appears to seek some greater differentiation in how the state regulates those schools across that sector. Of course, as Dr. Chase points out, that sector has everything from regionally accredited PhD granting institutions to small truck driving cosmetology schools who are training workers and certificates and everything in between. And so it would seek some greater differentiation in how we regulate those schools, as well as just some philosophical changes in how we balance consumer protection with the freedom to operate as an industry. And so we are still processing what that means for us and what that might mean for the future, but we will be tracking that for you as well. And then there have been several bills filed that address tuition increases. These tend to happen most every year, but there have been at least 4 or 5 filed that would seek to either cap tuition, freeze it in place for an entering class for their 4 years of study, tie it to some sort of inflation index like the CPI, for instance. And so we are watching those and probably along with UT and TBR engaging those sponsors in our view of what that would do to higher ed finance and the relative wisdom of those. They all come from a good place, which is limiting costs to students. But as we've heard these last 2 days, the finance picture is quite complex, and pulling on one string tends to create pressure in other parts of that fabric. So we'll be working with them on that. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes everything that staff wanted to talk with you about, unless there are questions about anything for us.
Any questions? Our agenda.